Good morning, everyone. Pam Jacobson here, your host of Three Things You Need to Know. Welcome. We are in week 13 of the Resilience series. So, for the last 13 weeks, I've been talking about resilience and our responsibility, if you will, to create resilience and exactly what that means, especially in this time where all of us are being challenged in terms of our resilience mentally, physically, emotionally. And so for the last 13 weeks, we've been looking at what is resilience, what does it take to become resilient? And we've now started down the path of our series looking at the actual work. So today we're going to talk about managing stress response and what that means and exactly what your daily routine should be. But I wanted to just take a second, especially for those of you who maybe are joining for the first time, to understand that this program will stand on its own. You'll get a lot of good information from it today, as all of them do. But I want you to, when you get a chance, go back and look at the previous episodes, because in the beginning, I've laid out sort of the blueprint, if you will, the foundation for resilience. What does it mean? There's 4 key pillars: sleep, stress response management, diet, and exercise. And in the middle of this 13-week series, I talked about sort of making the transition from just getting the information that I was providing to becoming committed to the work that we're now talking about. And so there was a couple of weeks we talked about developing your why and some of the tools that you could use to track and measure. So be sure to tune into those episodes. Having a strong why is going to be really critical to your ability to commit to the stuff that I'm talking about. 2 weeks ago, we started down the path of now doing the work. So now we've got the foundational blueprint. We understand why we're committed to doing this work. We want to become more resilient. Really, guys, I think it's not even just as much as wanting to become resilient is really needing to do that. We're faced with so much these days. It just seems like every day there's a new thing, right? If you're in Southern California, we're now facing crazy wildfire situation here on top of political and civil unrest, on top of global pandemic, and then our own day-to-day personal stresses, having to figure out how to work at home and maybe do school from home and be socially distanced from our loved ones. It's just a uniquely challenging time in the world for all of us. And so stress response management, this is very timely for us to be talking about stress response management and how do you do that and what does it mean to be resilient, because this is likely going to be a taste of what we will be facing as we continue to evolve into the future. So very important. Last 2 weeks, I covered the first pillar and the work that you need to do. That was on sleep. Sleep is obviously critical. If we can't get restorative, repairing sleep, it's going to be hard for us to become resilient. Last week, I interviewed Dr. Ashley Curtis from the University of Missouri. She was fantastic. She helped us understand sort of the science of sleep medicine, if you will. And this week, as I said, I'm going to talk about stress response management. And what does that mean? And so I'm going to start by telling you what it does not mean. It does not mean getting rid of stress, right? That's not really possible, right? There's so many stressors in our lives that we do not have direct control over. The fires, for instance, the political environment. Certainly where you can change things, maybe unbusy your schedule a little bit or make your environment more organized. Those things you should change. But for the most part, the stress, mental, physical, emotional stress that most of us face on a daily basis are not things that we directly have control over. This is really a discussion about how to temper, modulate the response to stress. How do we respond to stress? And for most of us, that is an unconscious, automatic response. And for the majority of us, if not all of us at this point in our lives, that response is likely to be a significant stress response that's happening pretty much around the clock, right? Very little change in the stress response from our stress hormone side to our relaxation side. So I'm going to talk about a strategy that you can use on a daily basis that will put you back in control of how you are choosing to respond to the stressors rather than abdicating that control to your just sort of automatically programmed nervous system. So all of us come onto the planet equipped with a survival system, a very unique, primitive part of the brain that's been with us since the dawn of time for man, essentially. It's what allowed us to evolve to where we are today, to propagate our species, to be able to dominate as we have on the planet. And this part of our brain, the back part of the brain, we call it you'll have heard many people say it's the primitive brain or the survival brain. It is programmed for our survival. And the way that it makes a determination about how much help we need for survival is it's constantly scanning our thoughts, our emotions, our reactions to the things in our environment to determine how much stress hormone needs to be produced to prepare us physically and mentally to be able to flee from the danger or to be able to stay and fight. Unfortunately, it is a primitive part of the brain, which means that it has not necessarily evolved from the time when we might be in danger from a wild animal right outside of our cave dwelling, for instance, versus today, something like a work deadline or an argument with your spouse or maybe a political environment that you're not too happy about. So the bottom line is that primitive nervous system is not able to make a determination between your emotions around how you feel about today's politics versus the emotions around maybe a near accident on the freeway. Or if you've been watching social media at all, there was a video circulating recently of a young man who had gone out. It looked to me to be like a park setting or a forest setting. Just was going out for a run. Seemed like it was probably a place that he normally ran, and he came upon a mama cougar with her babies, which, if any of you guys know anything about mamas, you never mess with them when they've got their babies around. Anyway, he was very innocently going about his morning routine and came upon this situation, and he managed to film the entire thing while running backwards. But you can hear and feel and sense the level of fear in him as he is trying to get away from this mama cougar. And that is just a clear example of that primitive nervous system kicking in when it was needed. It allowed him to have clear thinking, the ability to run away from the danger, backwards, by the way, and film the whole thing for social media. But unfortunately, for the majority of us, we spend our lives as if we were in that situation 24 hours a day. And as you can imagine, that is very wearing on our physical body. And it's one of the reasons why you will hear over and over again that statistically, many, if not most, of the illnesses and health conditions that we face throughout our lives have a basis in stress. Or our response to stress, really. And so what we want to talk about then is if most of us are stuck in that automatic, I'm in a jungle being chased by a cougar situation, we need to begin to create space in our daily life for the nervous system to recognize that we are not in mortal danger, right? I often say the nervous system has basically two modes, death and vacation, right? So you do the math on that. How often, even when you are on vacation, are you really on vacation, not still doing some work, not still experiencing some level of stress or feeling guilty that you're not doing some work? For most of us, it takes a good couple of weeks before we start to settle down, and then usually our great vacation is over with. So if we're not in vacation mode or rarely in that mode, then think about it. We're in what I would call death mode, that constant stress response, even when we're trying to sleep, which for those of you out there who watch the last 2 episodes and are like, man, I just, my sleep is a mess, can't fall asleep, can't stay asleep, don't feel like I rested when I wake up, you are likely to be in a situation where you have significant stress response going on. And this is going to impact your ability to sleep. So the work, let's get down to the work. What do you need to do? Well, I'm going to make it really simple for you, right? It's a really straightforward regimen, but here's the key: daily, consistently, right? That is the key. And I'm my own guinea pig. I'm my own 20+ year experience and experiment in wellness and how to become resilient. And what I have learned over that time is that I am not special or immune in any way from all of the things that I discuss with you. Regardless of how dedicated I might be, I fall off the rails, go off the rails, have to constantly bring myself back to a balanced center point. And it's having routine and being consistent with routine that provides me with that blueprint or that pathway that I can always return to when I get off track. So during this whole COVID experience, of course, like everyone else, I was completely thrown out of my typical daily track, my typical daily routine. I went from being in an office environment to working at home. I went from seeing patients face to face to doing most of my stuff online. And it was a huge transition for me, professionally and personally, and I'm socially distanced from my loved ones. So it's been a challenge. And what I recognized throughout that process is the more stressed I became, the more reactionary I was, the worse my sleep got, and the less inclined I was to sit still and do things like meditation, right? Think about it for a minute. If you're in a jungle or a forest, and in the case of our young man on social media, and we're running away from some life-threatening danger like a cougar, you're not going to sleep. You are not obviously going to have the ability to sit still or relax in any way. Your body is going to need fast fuel. So you're going to generally crave carbohydrates and fast sugars. And you're not going to feel very motivated to do any additional exercise because you're already running, right? So I found that for myself, this was the case early on. One of the reasons why I decided that it was important to revisit this whole idea of resilience with all of you. And because I was struggling with my daily routine, my daily practice. But when I really buckled down and forced myself to get back to that, all of that changed for me. And I believe, not only just my opinion, but when I look at the science behind resilience, and especially immune resilience, which is what's important for all of us with the pandemic, is that it is the proper management of that stress response that is going to set us up to be able to get repaired, our bodies repaired with sleep, and to be able to really support our immune health. So as I said, it's a consistent daily routine. In the beginning, you may have to just force yourself to sit still, right? If you're in that jungle and the lion's chasing you, you're going to feel uncomfortable initially because your nervous system thinks you're dying, remember? So the minute you try to sit down and be quiet, it's like, man, what are you doing? You're dying here. Just get up and move, right? You're going to feel anxious. So you may have to turn on some calming music or ease yourself into it, but it is going to take calming activity to get you into this routine. So I believe that the best approach to a daily routine is to think of it in terms of a beginning, a middle, and an ending point. So for stress response management, this has to really happen before you get your day started. So this should be something that you're doing the time, we look at the science behind stress response management, particularly one of the tools we can use, which is meditation. Generally speaking, we need about 20 minutes. It's going to take at least that much time for the nervous system to settle in and to let go, and for the mental process, that chatter that's constantly going on, to begin to settle down. So that's the idea with meditation. It's not that you're turning off your mind. A lot of people think it's clearing your mind. That's not really possible. The mind is always going. The brain is always going. But it's to sit still intentionally long enough and breathe deeply to allow the mind to settle down. So for 20 minutes in the beginning of your day. So I tell my patients, do this before you start your day. Get up, do your morning stuff, take your shower, whatever, go to the bathroom, but return quickly to a place where you can sit and meditate or some form of a similar activity. So for me, there's really only probably three things that would qualify here: meditation, biofeedback, and I did put in the chat area for those of you watching, not only my contact information, if you guys want to know more about who I am and why you should even be listening to what I have to say, my website's there, my email address and my phone number are there if you care to contact me after with any questions. But I also put the website for HeartMath, which is one company, but one that I really respect because they've done a lot of research in stress response management. They have a great little personalized biofeedback program called the Inner Balance that I think is a really great tool that you could use in this sort of 20-minute before I start my day session. So whether you use meditation, as I've talked about in previous episodes on when I talked about tools, there's lots of great meditation apps. Just find one that you like. But that 20 minutes should either be a meditation, a biofeedback session. And in some cases, I wouldn't say I would do this every day as my morning routine, but some forms of yoga that's very thoughtful, that's using the breath, not exercise yoga, not something like power yoga or hot yoga, and generally not done in a class setting. So for the purposes of this routine that I'm laying out for you, I'm going to suggest that it be meditation or biofeedback, and that it be for 20 minutes at the beginning of the day. So this is the work. We are now talking about if you want to be resilient. Last week I gave you, or 2 weeks ago, I gave you the bullet pointed list of the work that you have to do to be resilient when it comes to sleep optimization. This week, I'm giving you the bullet pointed list of the work that you're going to need to do to manage that stress response. So number one on that list, number one bullet point is 20 minutes of meditation or biofeedback before you start your day. Critically important. You have to suit up in that. I think of it as my suit of armor to protect me from all of the stress that will buffet me throughout the day. So you must start your day that way. The middle is what you do throughout the day, right? So, most of us are probably working during the day. We have multiple demands placed on us, and then other things that get thrown in on top of that. So it's very important. Again, this process is about taking back control, right? Training your nervous system about the difference between, say, your work environment and being in that wooded area having the cougar chase you, right? You have to train the nervous system what the difference is between those two things. And that comes down to what your reactions are during when those things are happening. So throughout your day, you want to check in with yourself and use some deep breathing. So what I suggest is that you set an alarm on your phone. I like the mindfulness bell, by the way, for that, because it's different than any other alarm or indicator. It's got a very pretty sound. It's kind of in the background. Nobody really knows what it is. It's not like a text message reminder. And all it does is it just serves as a reminder to bring you into the present moment and to give you a couple of seconds to take a deep breath or two. This is the signal. It's the only signal to your nervous system that you are actually not in mortal danger, right? That gentleman, if you watch that video, he was not able to take a deep breath. You could hear he was breathing very shallowly, very quickly, because he was in a life-threatening situation and he needed to get away. He couldn't fight that cougar. She would kill him if she caught him. He needed to move away. So, but in our daily situation at work, that's not going on. So you could take a deep breath. And when you do, that's an instant message to the nervous system that you are actually not in the mortal danger that it thought you were, just because you were having some pretty negative thoughts about what you were doing. So step number two, or bullet point number two, is the middle of the day. Throughout the day, you should be employing deep breathing. It doesn't need to stop what you're doing. You can deep breathe in a meeting with a client. You can deep breathe at your desk working on your computer. It doesn't require that you stop. You can deep breathe while you're driving. The key here is that you got reminded to do it, because otherwise we become wrapped up in our daily activity and we don't think about it, right? We flip again over to that automatic. It's like we give the power back to the nervous system and say, okay, I'm busy, you take over. Well, the problem is when we do that, the nervous system can't tell the difference in all that stuff floating around in our head between what is actually dangerous and could kill us and what is really just, something that's a pain in the butt for the day. So very important that you maintain control. You do that by using the deep breath as a signal to the nervous system. So until you become really pretty much on point with this, you're going to need a reminder. So set a timer. I set mine for every hour. It dings in the background. I take 2 or 3 deep breaths. I'm done. I'm moving on. Okay. The end of the day. So this would be the end of your workday. So I tell people, you need to bookend that most stressful part of your day, which for most of us is going to be the work that we're doing, whether you're a stay-at-home mom or dad, or you're like me now, working from home on the phone or in front of the computer all day. This is the bookending of that. So you start your day with 20 minutes and you end. So I say at the end of the work day, so whatever time you are finished with your work, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the evening, before you start your evening activities like getting dinner ready or watching your favorite programs on TV, you need to take another 20 minutes and do another session, whether that's meditation or biofeedback. And what that does is helps to resettle the nervous system and begin to wind you down for the important activity that you're going to do later, which is going to sleep. Especially those of you out there who have trouble getting yourself switched off, right? Getting yourself switched off from work, off your electronics, off of this need or desire to watch really, I think, anxiety provoking programming on television, whether it's the news or it's crime drama. A lot of times we are attracted to that type of programming because we're already in that stress response. So if you find that you're one of those type of people, you more than anyone need to do this wind down at the end of your workday. So bullet point number 3 is to end your workday with a meditation or biofeedback. And then finally, this is the really the final ending, is to do a sleep specific meditation at bedtime. So this is something on any of the meditation apps, they will have meditations that are specifically for sleep. And you would turn it on as you get into bed and fall asleep to it. So that may happen within a minute. That may take 10, 15 minutes. Maybe you'll hear it all the way through, but you don't have to listen to it all the way through. Your nervous system and your brain will still get the information, even if you have fallen asleep. So quick recap, there's basically 4 bullet points on the work list for stress response management. Number 1 is start your day with 20 minutes of meditation or biofeedback. Number 2 is set a timer to remind you hourly to take a couple of deep breaths throughout the day. Number 3 is at the end of your workday, take another 20 minutes to do a meditation or a biofeedback session. And then finally, when you do get into bed, set a sleep-specific meditation that can run even after you have fallen asleep. So there you have it. That's the work list for you on pillar number 2 in this week 13 of our Resilience series. Next week, I am actually going to be, I'm leaving tomorrow, traveling back east to see my grandbaby for the first time in a year. Thank you very much, COVID. And it's going to be really important for me to have my resilience in place because I'm going to be flying on an airplane, of course, while hearing that COVID numbers are going up. So I will do everything I can to protect myself, but I need to take this trip. So next week I will be there. I will be interviewing an expert on, most likely it'll be a health coach that I work with that can give us some pointers on how she works with her clients to really get this type of a program kind of seeded into their daily schedule. I'm also going to be interviewing a well-respected functional integrative cardiologist on the importance of stress response management for heart. So next week you are going to have a recorded interview on Wednesday that I'll drop in right at 9 o'clock to further the support for you and the information on how to manage your stress response. So as always, if you have any questions or comments, I've put all of my information here in the chat area for you to reach out to me. Otherwise, I look forward to it being able to provide you all with the next step in this information next Wednesday, and then I will be back with you live the Wednesday after that. Take care, everyone. Have a great week.